The following is a text exchange which occurred between brothers on Wednesday, April 7th, 2021. It begins with an article which I sent to my brother Brad. 3:10 p.m. Mexico's famous Lucha Libre wrestlers turned Latin America's largest wholesale food market into a battleground against COVID this week, barging down walkways to urge people to wear masks to contain the virus. Put on a mask, a group of wrestlers in traditional outfits urged buyers and sellers in the bustling thoroughfares of Mexico City's sprawling Centro de Abasto market. Be responsible. We must keep fighting, said a wrestler dressed in blue who performs under the name Ciclón Ramirez Jr. The campaign is so people know they can't stop fighting, that they need to keep wearing masks and using gel. The fight isn't over. We've got to give it more.
Excellent. In Bogota in the early 2000s, they had a big jaywalking problem. The mayor decided to hire like 400 mimes to mock people openly for their jaywalking. It apparently significantly lowered the incidences of jaywalking.
So wait, there are 400 mimes within range of Bogota?
There were at one point.
I think movies like Son-in-Law, which is a category that might only include the movie Son-in-Law, should only be available on DVD and not in any other format, digitally or otherwise. Straight from the heartland, this is Things I Text My Brother. Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of Things I Text My Brother, a series of conversations which have taken place between the brothers Drouillard on subjects spanning the neighborhood and the globe, and hopefully they will leave you smarter, kinder, and better looking. So today we're going to jump off from that dramatic reading that you just heard and discuss the topics therein. Maybe some Lucha Libre, maybe some Mimes, maybe the movie Son-in-Law, but we haven't planned our exact course because we want you to join us on that journey. That's how Things I Text My Brother is going to work. So, I'm Jeff. This is Brad. Let's talk about our texts. With that in mind, Brother Brad, what caught your interest? Where are you taking us on the subject of Lucha Libre, Mimes, and all this other good nonsense?
So I want to hear you say Bogota.
Bogota.
Hey,
Bogota.
look at that.
Bogota. I actually looked it up several times from different internet computers to make sure that they were pronouncing it well. For our listeners at home, Brother Brad has some very good Spanish background. I have some questionable French background. We both speak passable English, and anything else we're just going to be taking guesses and using internet translators on. But whatever, proceed.
So how old is Lucha Libre? When did they start it? Do you know?
Lucha Libre. Interestingly enough, brother, I found some different answers on this subject. And what really caught my interest is that it was in the 1860s, while we're busy, shooting our brother against brother, North versus South and all that. Down in Mexico, some people are deciding to break free from Greco-Roman wrestling into something that, I guess, in essence, started to veer towards Lucha Libre. In what manner? I don't really know. I know there weren't masks yet, but do you care to enlighten me?
Enlighten you on why they have masks?
On what was going on. You seemed like you knew what was happening. So tell me more.
I don't. I was curious if you knew the background.
Oh, so there was an Italian involved. I didn't look too much into this. Their Greco-Roman wrestling basically got a little bit more show put into it. And then a bunch of people are running around. And then in the early 1900s, they start to realize that there's this great history of the Mayans and the Aztecs and different people who would actually paint their faces when they would go into battle. And painting your face told different stories. So that kind of got modernized into putting these masks on. And these masks then took on this great meaning that was bigger than just the design of the mask itself, which led into, apparently these days, and I'm not sure if this is territory that you're going into or not, keeping your mask on is a big freaking deal in the whole Lucha Libre thing. And if you lose it, well, first off, you're not supposed to rip anybody else's mask off. If you do, that's a big no-no. But there are fights where the masks are wagered, because many of these Lucha Libre will actually keep their identity a secret until, late in life, or at least for a long time. So if you are in one of these matches where you bet your mask, the loser would have to take off his mask, usually reveal who he is, some other details about him, and it's kind of this big loss of honor thing. Alternately, you can offer to shave your head or retire entirely from Lucha Libre wrestling. So it's kind of a big deal, which apparently has been copied by WWF, which is a subject, or WWE, which is a subject I know nothing about.
I don't know anything about that, but I love the whole concept of máscara contra máscara and mask versus hair. That is a fantastic...
Yes, mask versus hair. I'm trying to think if we have any equivalents of that. I guess during the COVID era, there were a lot more masks around, but I don't know if at any point you had to choose between your masks and your hair. But yes, betting masks against hair is one of the more interesting wagers that I've ever come across. And I don't know. We should look more into those types of wagers.
So did you know that they sometimes pass down their mask from father to son? So if they don't get unmasked, they can pass their identity down.
I guess I saw something about El Santo, who was buried in his silver mask, one of the most famous, but then some of the other kind of legends of Lucha Libre wrestling did hand their masks down, but I didn't really look into it. Are there masks that have gone on for like multiple generations?
I don't know of anything more than 2, but was he El Santo Jr.?
I don't know. He was an El Santo. I don't know how many El Santos there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I don't know perfect. 11.
Muy bien.
Yes.
So there's 11? There's 11.
11. Okay, that's enough counting, but thank you.
So there's a restaurant near here called Son of Thurman. They opened another restaurant in the Son of Thurman chain. I was hoping they were going to call it Son of Thurman Jr. because would be awesome. And so I would like it to be El Santo. It would be Hijo del Santo y Hijo del Santo Jr. I would love for that to be the third one because that just sounds fun to me.
And if El Santo, Hijo del Santo Jr. was Son of Thurman, he would wear a sandwich on his face.
The Thurminator, in fact.
The Thurminator would be the
sandwich that they make. Yes.
That he would wear on his face. I've not had that sandwich, so I'm not ready to die yet, and I understand that's where it leads.
I can't eat that much. So I did find that there is in California since 2002 there has been a show that combines Lucha Libre and burlesque called Lucha Vavoom, which I find an odd combination.
Where does this exist?
It started in California. They travel the world now. It's comedy.
Oh, a live show. A
live show. Comedy, Lucha Libre, and burlesque all combined into one. So I'm assuming there's a lot of prancing Lucha Libre fighters out there in the burlesque part.
Well, there should be. And I mean, Jack Black could certainly prance, so that all goes together with the Nacho Libre. But I'm wondering if you're going to put.
Did you tell him they were the Lord's chips? Yes, I told him they were the Lord's chips.
I have not seen it enough to quote that movie. But I am wondering if you're going to have Lucha Libre, or I guess what are they called? Luchadores. Yes. How would I pronounce it? Luchadores. If you're going to have luchadores and burlesque people performing together, why don't you just add in like some people on tricycles and like some roller derby teams and turn it into a real show?
I kind of didn't want to search burlesque shows on my computer, so I didn't really look. It's comedy. They might have it. They might have the people who spin the plates while on unicycles while wearing Lucha Libre masks and nothing else. Like, I don't know.
So very quickly, even though this conversation all began with us talking about the Lucha Libre in the market, which for the listeners back home, Google whatever you want to find this. It is delightful to watch El Huracan or whoever it was going around the marketplace and basically assaulting people by slapping masks on their face, which, by the way, the luchadors are wearing their masks too. And it's clear that they have, their COVID mask underneath them. So in their little mouth holes, you can look and you can see, their COVID-19 mask.
I
which
didn't notice that.
I thought
when
that
you
was
said
an
it to me.
extra level of, that's like the insider tip for when you watch the video. Look for the mask under the mask, and that really kind of lessens the stakes, because if El whatever goes into a fight and gets his mask torn off in a mask versus hair battle, but underneath you find that he has his COVID mask and he's even double layered those, then is his identity truly revealed? I say no. So it's just an extra layer of protection.
Is the identity really in the eyes? That's the question then. Where is your identity centered? Is it the mouth? Is it the eye?
Cyclone Ramirez Jr. and his 3 masks could live on before Cyclone Ramirez Jr. Takes over. But from our original text, we jumped very quickly, or you did. I was happy to talk about Lucha Libre forever, but you enlightened me on the subject of Bogota and a certain policy that was put in place involving mimes. And I know we're inevitably going to be talking about that. Did you find anything along those channels that caught your interest?
Well, I did want, so this guy, right, this mayor of Bogota, who used to be the head of the Colombian National University before he became a mayor of Bogota. So he's a math professor.
Mockus,
right? It's a Lithuanian name.
Yeah,
it's a Lithuanian name, right? Lithuanian name in Spain. So
Colombia.
In Colombia, in Spanish. Right, so it doesn't mean Macas. But the idea that he hired Mimes to mock people and his last name is Macas just delighted me to no end when I read this years ago. But yeah, so when he was mayor, so not only did he hire Mimes, right? He did all kinds of social experiments and focused on positive emotions, encouraging change in behaviors, right? So he had mimes. He did a night out for women because he studied somewhere that people feel safer in a city where there are women on the street, and so they wanted to encourage more women to go out. He created a collection of cab drivers called Knights of the Zebra to talk about. So cab drivers who had gotten positive reviews, he invited them in, and they talked about how to make cab driving safer, better, encourage better driving. He handed out 350,000 thumbs up and thumbs down cards to just random people. So when they're walking through the streets, and they put thumbs up and thumbs down to people's behaviors. But the mimes are the best.
That is excellent too. You see the lorry drivers and people just like being slightly offended by some pedestrian or something, a person on a bicycle, and they give them a thumbs down card, like a yellow card in football. It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, but not only did he do that, but he increased their revenues while he was in office like 3 times what they were making as a city before. People were paying taxes and like they never had. It was safer. People were going out. He started out with those 20 mimes, and he ended up with, it was so positive that they trained 400 more. So it wasn't that they had 420 mimes in Bogota. They had 20, and then they trained some more people. To answer the question you asked that I didn't know the answer to before. But I find it just absolutely delightful that his name is Macas, and he had people mimes mocking people for their bad behaviors.
Speaking of like mocking people for their bad behaviors, you mentioned his affiliation with the university, the National University, before all this. Do you know why that affiliation ended?
I believe because he mooned his students, did he not?
He mooned his students, yes.
To get their attention,
which is fantastic. Yeah, that was one of my favorite things. This guy is a character, and anybody listening should go look up Antanas Macas and just his various shenanigans, many of which were successful, some which were not. But yeah, he could only have that first opportunity to become mayor, which he was actually mayor on 2 non-consecutive terms. But he could only have that because he got essentially relieved from his duties at the National University.
Relieved from his duties.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yes,
I see where you're going.
And I don't see that. But yeah, he mooned his students to get their attention, which it did, but it also caught media attention and eventually led to him resigning. But that also brought him some of the recognition, which he was then able to spin forward into being mayor. And he ran to become the leader of Colombia at some point, didn't win that. I think he's a senator as of like 2018 or something like that. So an interesting dude.
But I was fascinated by the whole concept of using comedy and positive emotions to change behaviors. And it was reminding me of a game my kids played, an app they had early on when I got an iPad from work that we messed around with so I could try things out and try some of our products on it and stuff from work. But we had one at home, and they got a game called Dumb Ways to Die. And it was that game was created by I want to say the Metro service in Melbourne in Australia to encourage people to be safe on railways. But it spawned from there into a larger set of dumb ways to die. And they have a catchy little tune that had over 4 billion unique plays out there in iTunes. Set fire to your hair, poke a stick at a grizzly bear. Dumb ways to die. There are so many dumb ways to die. It's fantastic. My kids used to sing that song.
If you've already wagered your hair in a Lucha Libre contest, then check that one off the list. That is not an option for you anymore. You would just be burning your bald head, which I guess would.
But it's great. It's these little fake characters, and one gets electrocuted on because he wasn't paying attention and falls on the railways. I think that was the initial one. But there's another one where a guy's just walking down the street listening to his headphones and walks into traffic, and you got to try to keep them from dying. That's the whole point of the game.
So wait,
to keep them from dying.
This was a game, and it was designed for young people to learn these lessons?
For teenagers, yeah. It was just kind of to poke fun, but
it's all bringing
little
back,
kids played it more.
As you're describing little kids learning, stupid ways to die, I'm remembering a horrifying class video we watched. I think it was in 3rd grade. And it was, teaching us life lessons. And I don't know what the rest of the video was, if it was a 30-second clip or if it included a number of ways to die. But the whole thing was riding on a school bus, and one of the kids was leaning out the window. And I don't know if they were puppets or what they were, but he's leaning out the window of the school bus and gets half his body torn off. And that was an enlightening thing that we were shown in 3rd grade, to learn not to lean out of bus windows. So do you know how many times I have leaned out of a school bus window?
I would say 0.
Often. I actually did it anytime. Anytime that I had the opportunity. I definitely still did that. And I tested fate, but I won. Here I am, 30-something years later.
But it's real. There was a kid.
It is real.
No. So I don't remember where it was. I'm trying to remember where it was. But there was there were kids on a bus, and it was one of those buses that had the kind of, I don't even know what it is, but in the middle of the top of the roof, there's a hole. Kid stuck his head out and he got decapitated. Like, that's real. Yeah, can you imagine? You're sitting there in the bus and this body falls down with the head off and just blood shooting everywhere. Like,
well, that's true. But I mean,
how horrifying could that be?
How many different PSAs are they going to show us? Like, where are they going to draw the line? It's with your Australian thing. Like, you got a lot of ground to cover if you're trying to prepare the kids for everything. Like, if you are a train robber and you go running around on the top of a train, there's a good chance that ends badly for you. But should we include that one? If you take 3 bricks and decide to play baseball with them, there's a chance that you're going to knock somebody in the head with one. That's a real thing that could happen. But how prepared do we need to be? You don't have an answer for that.
I don't have an answer for that, really.
Exactly.
I don't.
Well, come up with one and let me know, and then maybe it'll be okay to show your kids getting their guts shorn off at the waistline by a tree while riding a school bus.
Yeah. So here's one in New Jersey. Here's one. So
says the half-interested man who is actively Googling half people that were created by bus versus obstacle-related incidents.
So I actually searched to see on an annual basis how many people get decapitated while riding a bus. Didn't find anything. But in New Jersey in 2012, a kid, they had just crossed the George Washington Bridge, and he stuck his head out the party bus. And,
Was he going toward New Jersey?
New Jersey-bound bus departed Queens and
See.
just crossed the George Washington Bridge. Insane. That's insane. So it's a thing. So stops. You're on buses on a regular basis, I assume, for your job. So
those windows don't go anywhere. At least
well, thank God, because apparently you make bad life choices and you'd be sticking your head out, and I'll be doing the show by myself, and that's no fun.
I'd like to hear it. In the original pilot version, I did the show by myself, and I just made up voices for you. So you could do the same for me.
Yeah, but I'd have to be making up the entire text exchange, and then...
That's not what you sound like. You sound like, yeah, but I'd have to make up the entire text exchange. I know you sound like that because that's what I heard when I listened to that episode back.
I think it was fantastic that you did an episode by yourself. And maybe that should be the way you do it in the future anyway.
Yeah. So one thing I got into, something happened when we went out. We decided this was going to be the topic we're going to do this episode on. We decided we were going to go and do a little research. Shortly after that, I actually found myself reading what was it? Some kind of a medical science journal. I don't remember where it was from. That's something that's never happened to me before, but I was very interested. And this is the thing that I just couldn't find is, okay, the Mayor Marcus uses the mimes to kind of, give a nudge to behaviors of the populace of the city of Bogota. So he gives this nudge, though, without using, traditional enforcement tools such as the police and scare tactics and things like that. He mocks, he tries to guide people to kind of have a fun way of recognizing that there's a better way of doing things. So I started looking up public policies and creative public policies and public health measures and different things. And I was just looking for fun and creative different things that had been done. You didn't find anything like that, did you?
I didn't look much further than the Harvard Crimson, which had an article about Mr. Marcus.
Yeah. So that's what I didn't find. What I did find is this whole apparently huge part of developing science, developing after a book came out in, I think it was 2008, about the subject of nudges. And they're basically what I was describing using these. Well, I can even read a better description so you know exactly what I'm saying. Nudging in public policy involves using behavioral, economic, and psychological insights to influence behavior of policy targets in order to help achieve policy goals. Blah, 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 blah. Skip a bunch of jargon. But it's basically trying to have individuals use mental shortcuts that are better than the mental shortcuts they're already moving. So a mime steps onto the street, convinces a person to look at an intersection a different way. And because they're now processing that intersection in a new and different way than they ever have, they now have this tool to interpret and to, rather than being told what action they should have, to recognize the failures of the actions that they've had in the past and to come to their own solutions. But this whole public nudging thing, it seems like a boring topic, and it probably is. But ever since 2010, countries including Australia, Canada, Denmark, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Peru, Singapore, the UK, and the US have all developed basically departments of their government that do exactly this kind of stuff. Not necessarily with road crossing things, but getting people to wash hands, encouraging. One of the countries, it was even encouraging the medical people to wash their hands more often. A lot of it was medical things. One of the countries was just texting people to remind them of their appointments at the hospital. And the percentage of people who attended their hospital appointments went up by these extreme percentages from just sending them a text as opposed to telling them on the initial day and then forgetting about it. But this whole nudging, apparently we are, in all these countries that I mentioned, we're being manipulated by our government in all these different ways to just use our own experience of the world to make better choices. And in the first year that this type of stuff was being used in the UK alone, they say that they spent $650,000. And in one area alone, they were able to increase tax receipts by $70 million a month. And that was just in using it to encourage people to pay their taxes. Other countries had other results. So have you ever been nudged by a public policy, government policy campaign that you can think of?
Not that I can think of offhand, but I mean, we had Hands Across America, but that really wasn't a thing.
What was the message behind Hands Across America
That's what
other
I'm
than
saying. I don't even remember what the message
sharing germs? Did you know that I always thought, looking back in my youth in the 1980s, I thought that Hands Across America and We Are the World were directly related, but they didn't have anything to do with each other.
Well, I didn't know one way or the other.
I know that we went to Melinda Garcia's house and in our effort to line up and hold hands with people, and she lived on a busy, scary road. So that was probably poor decision making.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was all about. Local charities, it says. Just encouraging us to get together. So did you know that they have a wizard in New Zealand?
What does he do?
I don't recall, but not a lot of anything that I can remember, but he just, he's like living art in
Gandalf?
New Zealand.
Sauron?
No, his name is, he's just the wizard. He's just the wizard. His name is...
it's related to anything. Do you know
it's not. I'm just talking about public policies.
Hey,
and
did you know that
humor,
Chuck E. Cheese, they got a rat?
I prefer
Ratatouille has one too.
I prefer Major Magics.
Yeah.
So
actually,
I remember going to Major Magics as a kid and riding in the back of our van with nobody sitting in seats. So maybe there was a public service nudge that taught me to wear my seatbelt in the car. Maybe
because we never did. Seatbelts that were like made out of metal that was like taken directly from a hot coal fire. Anytime you put one of those searing metal seatbelts of probably the 1980s and before, you put it on, like your next stop should have been driving to a burn unit for what those things did to you. So it's good to know that even though some things in the world have gotten worse, at least we have seatbelts that don't create permanent brands on our skin these days.
Yeah, I can't think of any nudge that worked. I did when they were having the flu pandemic, whenever that was, the bird flu. I got called by the county health district to do a survey, and I had nothing else to do. Didn't have kids yet or anything, so I had time on my hands. And I started to do the survey, and the first question was, in the event of a global flu pandemic, how likely would you be to die? And I said, is 100% an option? And she stops, and the woman stops and says, I don't know how to move on from here because no one ever says they're going to die. Well, I said, it's not a pandemic if no one dies. So my wife's a teacher.
Go play Oregon Trail, lady.
Right. My wife's a teacher. She's going to get it, and I'm going to get it. And then she said, well, how likely would you be to follow the health district and what they say about what you should do during the pandemic? And I said, I'd be very likely to follow it. So that's kind of like a nudge, I suppose.
Did you know that New York had a wizard?
I did. Mr. Wizard?
This guy, and actually I forget his name right now. He wore purple, but he was an interesting wizard because in New York, there became an increasing proliferation of characters who would stand around, the Elmos and the six Elmos and the Cookie Monsters, trying to get their pictures with you and get paid money. But there was this one guy, he usually hung out in Central Park, and he was a wizard in all purple. And his shtick was different. He walked around mumbling, often obscenities, but unpleasantries about whoever was around him. He was usually very dissatisfied with the people around him. He was angry that they weren't giving him money and kind of celebrating him like Elmo and Hello Kitty. But it was kind of cyclical because the people were all not wanting to celebrate him because he was actively mumbling under his breath in a way that clearly made it sound like he disliked and was an actual physical threat to them. So I guess if we learn anything from this whole conversation about Lucha Libre, public policy, nudges, mimes, and all that, it's probably that if you want to dress up as a character and have people give you money, don't actively walk around insulting them, cursing at them, and generally being a frightening human being.
Well, they had in What We Do in the Shadows, they had the procession of shame where they walked in circles around the guy and said shame. Does he do that kind of thing? Would this wizard in New York have done that?
I think that's Cersei from Game of Thrones.
Shame.
No, she doesn't do it. She got shamed
shamed
by the scary lady with the with the weird. What was that? What was that religious group called? The Seven or something. A shame.
They're the woman that shamed the queen in The Princess Bride. Bow down to the Queen of Refuse.
Bow down. What was happening after that?
She was marrying the Prince Humperdinck, right? And she had true love, and she had so she had to bow down to the Queen of Refuse.
Oh, she has one good line. The Queen of I can't remember what it is.
You got me.
Well, we've probably covered about as much ground as we need to. But as always, or as we often hope to do, there's one person that we haven't heard of on this subject yet. He is the person that we know as our father, our papa. His name is Arthur Drouillard. He is not a doctor. He is not an ordained minister, but he is Father Arthur. So let's ask him a question.
Have you ever had a positive social change commercial or campaign by a government change your behavior, such as in Bogota in the early 2000s? The mayor of Bogota hired mimes to follow jaywalkers and other street crime people around and mock them to try to positively change their behavior. Have you ever been convinced to change your behavior by a campaign?
Yeah, I guess when in the 60s, when we used to have to hide under our desks in elementary school, I guess that caused me to be afraid of things I wasn't even aware of before that. So I guess it negatively impacted me.
If you were a Lucha Libre wrestler, what personality would you take on? And when you died, which of your sons would you pass the mask to, and why?
Interesting. I have to come up with a name of a character. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess my wrestler character would be a gorilla. And if I was going to pass it on, I guess I'd pass it on to Jeff, because he scares me.
Well, folks, now that we've heard from Father Art, it means that our time together is coming to an end for this episode. We've said just about everything that we could say on Lucha Libre and mimes and random discussions of wizards, but fear not, there will be another episode coming your way soon as we can dig back into the archives, find another gem of a text exchange, and do a little research to enlighten your day, just as we did this time. I don't know if there's an Instagram page yet, or if there are like or subscribe buttons to hit, but if you can, do it, and we will talk to you next time.